Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can clearly tell, I am actually in a new location because I am in LA right now and I'm actually filming in my car. I was gonna film in my room, but the thing is the lighting there isn't the greatest, so I decided to just film it on my car at least because it's nice and quiet and I don't have to worry about anyone making any noises except for me. So we shall see how this goes. Honestly, I don't know if you guys can hear the engine because there might be some background noises from that. I have never filmed my car before. I don't know how it works, but we're just gonna go with it because I want to get this video out of the way because when I go back to New York, I will not have time to film this video. I'm crazy busy next week. So without further ado, let's get right on with the video. So for today's video, I'm planning on discussing the books that I read in October. Honestly, I did not read too many books, to be honest. I read a total of 16 books, I believe, though most of them are not physical copies, which is why I'm a little bit bummed out because I only read one book that was a physical copy, and then after that I started this series and I just read that series for the entire month. I literally just finished it last night on my plane ride over to LA. So honestly, I was not that happy with myself this month because I was hoping to get more of my physical copies out of the way. Unfortunately, that did not happen because once I started the series, all my plans just went off because I just got really engrossed in this one series. And yeah, we're gonna talk about the other books I read this month, including that series. So the first book that I read in October is The Devil's Thief by MAXWELL. I actually did this one because of a blog tour, so I will link my blog down below in case you want to check out a more full-length book review on this book. So I'm not gonna go too much into detail about this book because this is actually book 2 of the Last Magician series, but basically the books follow a girl called Esta who travels back in time into the early 1900s to retrieve this book that was destroyed by this magician. And the reason why she decides to do so is because she believes that this book holds a secret to the order who in the modern world has basically risen to power, and mages, which are people with power, are basically forced to extinction. They're also basically trapped in this brink that surrounds Manhattan. And so now that she's in the early 1900s, she has to navigate this world full of crime and gangs, and she has to figure all of that as well as retrieving this book. So that's basically what the series is about. Honestly, I think that this book is fantastically written. I think the author did a fantastic job with weaving magic and history together. She also made the early 1900s very rich and very detailed, so if you really like descriptive writing, then this is definitely for you. However, for me, there were definitely a few times when I thought that it was a little bit too descriptive and it ended up being a little bit draggy, but because the plot as the book continues became very, very complex actually, it actually ended up being okay because one, I really like the history of the 1900s. That era is something I'm very fascinated with, and two, because there's just so much stuff going on that you kind of really need the descriptive writing to appreciate everything that was happening. And to be perfectly honest, I was very, very compelled to find out what was going to happen because there were just so many elements that were introduced in the second book that was not there in the first book that really engaged me and made me very curious to find out what will happen. And now that I'm done with it, I really want to know what happens in the third book. In terms of the character, my favorite characters is definitely Esta and Hart. Their interactions are definitely very sizzling and very dynamic, and I really liked every single time that they were together in this book. So one thing that I did find really adorable at times was because Esta is part of the modern world. She grew up and was raised in the society that we know now, and there's definitely things that women do now that were not acceptable at all in the early 1900s. And so when she decides to cross-dress as a man, which to us is not a big deal, like putting on pants is not a big deal at all. Pretty sure everyone nowadays, like females, wear pants all the time, and that completely shocked Hart. Like, he was just very embarrassed. He was like, oh my gosh, she's showing her ankles, I don't know what's going on, like, is this okay, etc, etc. And I just found that whole situation to be very endearing actually, and I thought that made the characters even more rich and appealing for me. Another thing that I like about the second book that wasn't there in the first book is actually that this book has a lot more POVs from the secondary characters, so that really allowed me to understand characters that I didn't really know too much about in the first book. They were there, they were introduced, but I think this book did a much better job in finding out or showing the readers their history, their background, why they do the things they do, you know, where they're coming from, etc. And it made the book a lot more complex, like I said, not just for the plot but also for the characters. So overall, I actually really enjoyed this book. It is a very long book. I think this book is almost 700 pages and it's very heavy, but ultimately I enjoyed it a lot, and I believe I gave it a 4 stars, which for me is actually pretty good. So anyways, I am really hoping for the third book to come out ASAP. Hopefully I will have the chance to be in the blog tour again, because that was actually a lot of fun to do. But this is the first book that I read for the month of October. So the second book that I want to talk about is actually an audiobook. So this month I only read, like I said, The Devil's Thief, and then I read this one series, and that's all I did for physical copies. The reason why I was able to still reach to 16 books this month is because I did a lot of audiobooks in general, and I did like I think I did 2 trilogies, and then I did this one and some other books. I don't remember all of them, but for today I want to talk about Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson. So the reason why I decided to pick up this book is because of BYOB-thon, which I will link above and for my TBR video that I did this month. Basically the entire month I had so many books I wanted to pick up, and I think I read only like a few of the books I actually wanted to read for this month for that readathon. Didn't work out too well, to be honest, but I did pick up this one because this one was recommended by a host of the readathon, and honestly I didn't really know what to expect because I'm not really into paranormal books these days. Anything with zombies and, you know, vampires and stuff like that, not super interested. I read them every once in a while because, you know, I need a break from the other genres I'm reading, but I don't actively seek out these books. But because this was recommended by a host, and I actually have seen this book quite a number of times on social media, people really liking it, so I figured why not. And I actually ended up enjoying it a little bit more than I expected. I gave it a 3.5 stars, which I think is actually pretty good for me. So in terms of what this book is about, it follows a girl called Mila whose best friend Riley died suddenly, and people seem to think that she was part of the suicide pact because the past week or something, or the 2 weeks prior, like recently, 2 of the most popular girls in the school also committed suicide, or so they thought. However, Mila refuses to believe that her best friend committed suicide or the fact that she was even part of the suicide pact, and so she decides to raise her from the dead to find out what really happened. But things didn't go as planned, and somehow she ends up raising all 3 girls back to life. Unfortunately though, none of them remembered what really happened, and because of the spell that Mila used, they only have 7 days to recall what happened before the spell wears off. And now they have to figure out who really murdered them or what really happened, and they also have to learn to work together because prior to death, those 2 groups, Mila, Riley, and the other 2 girls, their names were June and Dayton, did not get along. They're on 2 very spectrums of the social sphere, and so now they have to figure out how to work together to solve what really happened. So like I said, at the end of the day, I actually found myself pleasantly surprised, probably because there weren't that many emphasis on zombies. Actually, I thought this would be a very heavily zombie book, but to be honest, that aspect didn't really play a huge part in this book, so that's probably why I ended up enjoying the book more than I initially thought. The plot was pretty entertaining, but it was definitely a little bit predictable because I basically narrowed the suspects down to 2, and when it happened, when I found out who it was, I was not at all surprised that it was one of the ones that I had suspected. But the reason why I was able to enjoy the book so much was actually because of the characters. For some reason, I really compare them to Mean Girls. I don't know why. I feel like a lot of the characters were very similar to the characters that I know from Mean Girls. So first of all, there is Dayton, who I think is very similar to Karen in Mean Girls. They share the same airheaded personality and kind of happy-go-lucky personality as well. Then there is June, who I think will be Regina, but I think June is on the nicer scale of Regina. I think Regina, if I haven't watched a movie in a while, was definitely bitchier. June though was a nicer version, but they are still very similar in terms of their personality. And I think Mila will be Katie because they both felt very socially awkward and out of place with their peers. The only person that I can really pinpoint is Gretchen / Riley. They're not really that similar together, but the other 3 characters I think they're very similar to Mean Girls, and I thought that was great. I really like that part. Another aspect that I really enjoy is the fact that the author did such a fabulous job with bringing up questions relating to life, to death, and what happens afterward, and I thought that was great. So at the end of the day, I can definitely see why this book was buzzed about. It discusses a lot of important topics such as friendship, you know, life and afterlife, of course, bullying, and so much more, and I honestly was really surprised at how much I enjoyed this book. The reason why I gave it 3.5 stars though is because I did think the plot was not the greatest. It was just, like I said, it was very predictable, and the fact that there's definitely nothing about this book that can really make it a 4 or 5 star read, which is why I thought a 3.5 star is perfect. It's not quite a 3 star, but it's not quite a 4 star. But yeah, I actually enjoyed this book way more than I thought. So the final book that I want to talk about in this video is the book slash series that I basically was reading the entire month of October, and that is the Throne of Glass series. I only have this one with me right now, Kingdom of Ash, because I was not about to cart the other books with me, so I didn't really want to do that. And I actually ended up bringing this book because I was about 200 pages left, and I managed to finish it on my flight to LA, which I was really happy about, because I was like, yes, I need to find out. Honestly, okay, so this part, there will be spoilers, by the way. I'll let you guys know when there's spoilers somewhere underneath, so you guys know not to watch it if you guys haven't read this book yet. But basically this whole series follows a girl called Selena Sardothian, who grew up as an assassin. Something happened to her when she was 8 years old in her hometown or homeland, and she was basically raised by the king of assassins, Darlin, I think it's called. I don't even know the name, how to pronounce it properly, but basically that's what the story is about. It follows her and her life as an assassin, as she becomes a king's champion, as she becomes something so much more than everything that she imagined. There's just so much magic, there's so much romance, there's so much fantasy involved. I absolutely adore this book, and when this book came out, I was okay. So that's the reason why I reread the entire series. So to be fair, I reread up to Heir of Fire because that was the last book that I read many years ago, and at that point I was like, I don't want to wait every year or like every 2 years, which I know will happen with these books, before the whole series is done. I want to know when the whole series is done so I can just binge read all of it. And that's exactly what I did. I just didn't expect myself to spend 3 weeks basically, because I read The Devil's Thief the first full week of October, and the rest of the month though was clearly purely devoted for this series. And yeah, like, I mean, end of the day, I did enjoy the series. So right now there's gonna be spoilers, by the way, so just FYI, because I want to talk about this book a little bit more in depth in this video. So yeah. Okay, first of all, am I the only one that was slightly disappointed in this book? Because, okay, so the beginning was great. The first like 500 pages, I was like laughing, I was kind of crying. There's like so many emotional parts. I wasn't crying obviously, but I was very like emotional. Okay, I don't really cry in books or videos or movies or whatever. That's just not my personality. But there are definitely a few parts in this book that really made me emotional in terms of, you know, not to the point of tears, but almost there. And this book, I was towards about like the last 300 pages, I started to have an inkling that perhaps this ending will not be what I desired for this series. But honestly, I think the reason why I was most disappointed in this book is because I'm so disappointed with what happened to Wordstones. I mean, that part just pissed me off so much because first of all, like, nothing even productive happened. It was like this whole past few books has been talking about getting the Wordstones. The Wordstones will help, you know, banish like Erewhon or whatever his name is, like the evil guy, and that will be that. And I figured like once they do that, like it would just be so much easier for everything else. That did not happen at all. That, like, the whole scene I felt was the most retarded thing to ever happen. The fact that Aelin, or yeah, her name is Aelin now, she went through all that trouble. I don't even know the purpose of her having Dorian, to be honest with her, because I thought it was gonna be like a half-half split, and I was like, perfect, this will work out well. But then end up like not even utilizing his powers. Like, it took out like enough for him to be like a normal guy, and I'm like, what's the purpose of that? And it still needed Aelin's like entire lifespan, and I was like, so what? Like, just originally it was just gonna be her, so what was the purpose of Dorian being in there? Like, if it was one thing if he was there and it helped her survive and still have like powers, etc., but that wasn't the case at all. It felt like they really got jilted in every single possible way, and the gods all betrayed her as well, with the fact that they just wanted to leave and they wouldn't even let go of Elena. They didn't even want to banish Erewhon. Like, they just, it was just the most ridiculous thing. I was so pissed when once I got to that part. I was really mad with this book. I was so mad at this book, guys, when that happened. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? So the other part that I am so mad about is the part of Aedion. I don't even know how to pronounce his name, to be honest. I I tried looking this book to see if there's a pronunciation chart, but it's not in this book. I think it might be in a previous book or something, so I remember seeing it there. But basically, Aylin's cousin, that one scene with his father Gabriel, I swear to God, I was so mad because I don't really see the reason why he even died. That part pissed me off so much as well, because everyone seemed to have a happy ending. I wanted Gabriel to like finally have a father-son relationship with Adion. I feel like I'm pronouncing that name wrong, but anyways, I really was hoping for that scene, and when that happened, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, it felt like the author just really wanted to have someone die just because it made things more realistic, but I didn't want him to die, you know? I didn't want any of the characters to die. They were all so important, and they all had such great, you know, chemistry with each other, and oh my god, that part pissed me off so much as well. Also, one scene that I really want to discuss about is the fact that at the end, when they had the Lost Fae of the North with their wolves, like, where did that come from? Because I don't remember anything in the previous, like the entire like 700 pages or 800 pages talking about that at all. I don't know who went to go find this like the Lost Fae. I don't know how it happened. Like, it just seemed like, you know, Aylin just literally just brought something up out of her ass. And I mean, usually she does that, but there's usually like subtle points like from the beginning, like mailing out letters, you know, like, and she'll kind of explain like how this happened. That scene though, there was no explanation. There was no like subtle things that happened prior to this scene where it made it more realistic, because when that happened, I was like, who are these players? Where did they come from? I don't remember hearing about them. I just remember people saying that these Fae were lost, but there was no mention about where they are now. There's no mention about trying to track them down, and like they had these wolves. I'm like, where did this come from? Like, that scene to me just felt really unrealistic. That was probably the most unrealistic scene, to be honest, because everything else, even though I hated it, such as the word stones and all that stuff, was realistic. But that scene was not realistic to me, and that really pissed me off as well. So honestly, like I said, the last 300 pages I was not happy with whatsoever. So anyways, spoilers over. I don't want to keep on ranting about the last few hundred pages, because overall I really still enjoyed this book. I thought this book was fabulous. The reason, even though I was mad about the few hundred pages in there, at the end of the day I still really enjoyed how it all ended in terms of what happened to all the characters, except for that one character that I was not happy about. But other than that though, I really enjoyed the whole series in general. I like the journey with finding out about what really happened, like the progress of the characters from the beginning to the end. I like the journey of emotions for me especially, and just everything that really happened. There are just so many elements to it that I really enjoyed, from the Valg world, the demon world, I guess, whatever, as well as like the world they're in right now. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say about the series and this book. That's basically what I've been doing this past month though, and that's why I didn't read as much book as I wanted to, because the last few books I swear were all 700 pages, and this one was 950 pages, I believe. Yeah, almost 1,000 pages. I think it's like 970 or 980 pages. When I told my co-workers when I brought this book in, I was like, yeah, it's like 700 pages. They're like, that's not happening. When is the movie coming out? And I'm like, you know, good question. When is the movie coming out? I was like, I think it might be better as a series, kind of like Game of Thrones kind of thing. I think that would be a really good way for this book to be represented if it ever gets put on the screen. But I'm like, really, I have very mixed feelings about this book. At the end of the day, parts of me really enjoyed it. It was like, yes, this accumulation of everything that I've basically been reading this past month has finally come to an end. At the same time, there are definitely scenes, as I mentioned already, that I really didn't like. So very mixed feelings about this book in general and this series in general. So anyway, that's all I have to talk about. I decided to change angles because that area was starting to become super dark there. I don't know what happened. The sun is about to set on that side, so I'm going to film my video and change the angle onto this side a little bit more, and hopefully it won't be as bad. So anyway, that's all to say for this video, for these 3 books that I read. I mean, for the most part, it has been a very enjoyable month because I pretty much loved every single book, or really liked every single book of the Throne of Glass series. And Undead Girl Gang I was very pleasantly surprised. Devil's Sleep, I really enjoyed that book as well. So overall, it was a relatively positive month in terms of the book that I read. It's just that I wish I read more books. So hopefully November will be better. In case you haven't checked it out already, I already did my November TBR, so I will link that above in case you want to check out the book that I'm aiming to read for this month. But anyway, that's all I have to say for this video. If you also read the Throne of Glass series, I mean, if you have finished it, including the latest book, let me know in the comments below if you agree with what I had to say. If you didn't agree with what I say, let me know why down below. I'm really curious to know your thoughts. Obviously, if you have read the other books I mentioned in this video, let me know down below if you agree with me or not. Again, I'm very curious to see and hear all of your thoughts and comments about the books that I read this past month and my opinions on it. But that's all to say for this video. If you like this video, please do give me a thumbs up and subscribe down below. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. But that's it for today, guys. Thank you. Bye.